Hello and welcome to Jason Live. My name is Patrick Shea. We're back once again with our STEM career series, where we learn about careers in science, technology, engineering, and math from role models working in those fields. Today's role model is Larry Feinberg. Larry describes himself as an entrepreneurial biotechnologist. He has a PhD in microbiology and is CEO of a biotech startup company that he founded to help solve some of the world's biggest sustainability issues. We're going to connect with Larry in just a moment and learn all about the work he does. But first, I just want to remind everybody out there that today's event is live and interactive. Just below this video window, you can see a box where you can send us questions and participate in our live polls. We're going to try to get as many of you involved in the program today as we can. Right now, though, it's time to get Larry involved. Welcome, Larry. Thanks for joining us today.
Hi, great to be here.
Awesome. So, entrepreneurial biotechnologist. There are many syllables in that description, but can you tell us what it actually means? What is it that you do, and how does it apply to the lives of ordinary people like us?
Sure, absolutely. Well, there's lots of applications for biotechnology, whether it's food or fuel and energy or pharmaceuticals, chemicals. There's lots of different ways that we can use a lot of the diversity on this planet. Most of the cases, it's microbiology, microbes, which been on the planet for a really long time, some 4 billion years or so. And so there's been a lot of really interesting processes that we as people can help to use to our advantage, solve a lot of our big problems.
So, why don't you tell us what are some of our big problems that we're trying to solve, and how are microbes and how is biotechnology helping us do so?
Sure. So one way I've been involved in companies that were working on energy, for example, making biofuels out of sugars that come out of trees and grasses, for example. There's a lot of issues with climate change, concerns with global warming, and using a low carbon fuel is perhaps a better alternative than fossil fuels. What I'm working on now currently is around food security. And so we can use very similar microorganisms to produce food and protein and other important components of nutrition for animal health. The meat and fish that we eat, it's important what they eat too. And so that's something that sometimes gets lost. And that's a big part of what we're working on.
So, why is that important, though? Why is it important what the food that we eat eats, and what are we struggling with there in terms of sustainability at the moment?
Sure. So, a lot of folks maybe they don't realize, but our oceans are in really tough shape. Something like 75% of our oceans fisheries have been over harvested. They're either at capacity or in decline. And what's interesting is we're raising more fish on farms for the first time ever just this past year than we're raising cattle. And that's not per heads; that's actually per pound. So a lot of fish eat fish, and we don't have as many fish left in the ocean because of our practices. So we are now looking for alternative sources of food, and one way is feeding these fish soybeans, which is maybe an incomplete solution at best. There's nutrients, amino acids that are missing from these vegetable proteins. And so finding a cheap, affordable source helps keep our food healthier, but also cheaper for us as well. When we go to the supermarket, we want a certain type of salmon that costs a certain amount of money. And thinking about sort of this whole supply chain is a lot of what I do.
So we had mentioned before we've got live questions coming in, and here's our first one from Tim. He's asking, what made you want to start KnipBio, the company that you founded?
Yeah, well, look, I feel really honored and really lucky to have had the opportunity to start this company. And it was just something I've wanted to do. My dad was an entrepreneur, so I had a lot of good role model in terms of that. And yeah, it's just something I was very much itching to do, and there was an opportunity to do so, and I met the right people and got to take the chance, and I'm having a great time. Really excited to be doing it.
So you shared some images of some of the processes that you go through to create the food that you were just describing, the fish food. So why don't we take a look at a few of those now and just kind of talk us through what we're seeing and how this all works together to solve these problems.
Well, I'm actually not seeing any of the images, but I'll be happy
We're
to
going to
talk
pull
through
those
it.
up right
So
now.
essentially, what we're talking about here is a fermentation process that occurs in a vat, a vessel. Actually, one of the very first fermentations we did was in my barn, and essentially it was a big garbage can. So it doesn't have to be so sophisticated, but oftentimes it is a very expensive piece of equipment. So we grow up these organisms and get them to very high density, meaning we get a whole lot of cells per liter there, and we dry that down and we formulate that as part of a feed pellet that then can be fed to fish and other animals.
We're continuing to field some of these questions that are coming in. We've got one here from Mrs. DeMaio's class, which I really like. Let's take a look at the question here. They want to know, how do you describe yourself? And I know in the bio info that we asked you to share beforehand, you said, I have somehow found a way to combine an Indiana Jones approach to entrepreneurialism and environmental microbiology and biotechnology. What does all that mean? Is that how you'd still describe
Absolutely.
yourself?
I have to give my tip my hat to my first CEO, my first boss. He actually called me Indiana Jones once in front of the entire company. I'll give it to him. But so essentially, I get to go out into the field, especially as a scientist. I was going out bioprospecting quite a bit. That's going and hunting for new microbes. There's something like 99% of microbial diversity is completely unknown. Now, that's just a guess. That's an estimate. But the point is that there's a whole lot more that we don't know than what we do know. And so, going out there and looking for new microbes and looking for ways that they can help solve a lot of our problems, whether it's bioremediation and cleaning up the environment. I saw that was one of your previous speakers, or potentially making some valuable chemicals or fragrances. There's lots of other things. So we're looking for these organisms that can help make our products that we like and make them more sustainably and cheaper. That's of a lot of interest. And so, we have this tremendous resource in the biodiversity in our planet, and then applying it to what we'd like, and that's a lot of what we're going after here.
So we were just looking at a few images there of you bioprospecting in some various locations. Let's bring those back up, and why don't you tell us where you are in these pictures? What kinds of environments do you look for new microbes in, and why?
Yeah, so I think any bioprospector will kind of have a targeted environment in mind. And so, when you are looking perhaps for a organism that can convert cellulose, which is just long chains of sugar, which every tree and every grass makes. Anyway, if you're looking for an organism that can convert cellulose into fuel, maybe starting where there's a lot of cellulose, a lot of plants is a great place. And so there are some hot springs in the Northwest that we went and checked out and fished out some really good organisms there. There's other places where cellulose is like paper, and so paper mills is an excellent place, from scraping off the sludge on the side of the machines to getting into the landfills and poking around in those big nasty piles. Is actually where a lot of the best microorganisms are and live in, and so we were able to scoop some out and find some brand new species that folks hadn't seen before.
Cool. We've got more questions coming in here. Here are a couple related questions. One's from Adriana, who asks, what's the most exciting part of being a biotech engineer? And Rachel wants to know, what thing about your job do you most enjoy?
Okay, yeah. So I think the ability to solve some of our biggest problems by taking advantage of these existing microbial processes is really powerful. And so that's pretty exciting, is putting these pieces together and trying to solve some of our biggest problems. I think those are maybe hand in hand, the same answer there.
Yeah, and this might be, we've got another question here from Ellis, probably on along a related line. How did you get interested in fish for your job, and do you like to eat them?
I do, in fact. I was a vegetarian for a bunch of years, and so fish was the first animal protein I introduced back into my. So that there's actually a personal connection there.
Hmm.
I chose fish because I love our oceans, and we're actually most folks might not realize we're at a crisis phase with our oceans. The fact that many of these fisheries have been exhausted, and there's definitely got to be a better way. When we're raising fish, there's that's probably the most economical way to get protein to the very large world population. We have 7 billion people. We're on our way to 9 billion, according to certain estimates. And the consumption of protein around the planet is growing by leaps and bounds. And so, on one hand, fish is an excellent way to feed the masses. On the other hand, there's a lot of work to be done to make sure that it's not as harsh on our environment, and that it's a more sustainable source of food for us.
Sure. Next question here is from Connor. Have you taken part in any inventions that many people know about? Is that how it works in your industry? Do you invent something, or is it a
Yeah,
little bit
great
different?
question. Yeah, in fact, my company has two patents, and that's just in this past year, and we're going to brew up a couple more, most likely in the next few months ahead. Whether people know about them, actually, I try to do as good a job as possible to not let a lot of people know about it, just the people I want to know. Kind of keep it a little bit quieter.
Yeah, is that tricky to balance that between, getting the word out, but also, protecting your intellectual property?
Absolutely. So the good thing about me is there's only or my business is the folks that I need to talk to. I can find a way to get to them. And it's versus like me selling an iPhone or something where I want absolutely everybody to know about it.
Sure.
So it's a little bit of a different approach.
So we're going to move on now. We've talked a bit about the kind of work that you do today and why you do that, but we want to learn more about your career path. How did you get to where you are today? So we've got some questions that have come in, actually a lot of questions along this line. And this first one here is from Jonathan, and he wants to know, what made you want to have the job you have today?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, well, I started out as a high school teacher after I finished my degree, and I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed working with kids, and actually, I think I learned more of those 2 years teaching than the 4 years of college before that. That's maybe a little secret there, but the at the end of that, I felt that maybe I didn't know enough, and wanted to go back to school and learn more. And so got to spend 5 more years studying and learning about these extreme organisms that live in hot springs and breathe metal and all these crazy organisms, and I really enjoyed that. So overall, it kind of looks like a wavy line maybe going forward, but in the reverse, every step that I've taken has led me to right now. And so by understanding the microbial diversity, by understanding sort of how to apply some of these most interesting organisms to solve our problems, has prepared me very well for this moment.
Okay, our next question's from Rachel. She wants to know, why do you do your job and not another one related to science?
Right. Well, I've held several different jobs within science. And so, I think right now this is the best job possible because I get to work with scientists and I get to work with lawyers. Believe it or not, that can be fun. I get to work with lots of different business guys to put some arrangements and deals together. So I get to try on a lot of different hats all in the same day. So it's pretty exciting.
Speaking of exciting, our next question here is from Paige. She wants to know, did your parents think your job is dangerous? We just saw you in a couple of those pictures standing next to very hot vents, and you're out in the field, you're traveling the world looking for the next cool microbe. Is it dangerous?
There were some elements of danger for sure. I would say one of my low lights was falling into a hot spring, and that was obviously scalding hot water. There was holding on to a little bit of a fence, and the fence gave way.
Oh.
So yeah, it's not always perfect and ideal, but you take a lot of the precautions. I was wearing pretty heavy pants and boots, and so overall I was able to not get hurt too badly. So yeah, my parents, I think they were just pretty psyched, that I was still playing in the dirt after all these years.
I bet. And you said your parents were entrepreneurs. Your dad was an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
What do they think about that aspect of your career?
Yeah, it's not a big surprise.
Cool. We're going to continue on with the questions here. This next one's from Leah. Who or what was your inspiration for this job? Was there somebody in particular that really motivated you down this path?
Yeah, really good questions from the audience. So yeah, I mentioned my dad and my mom too. Obviously, they work together in their business, and so clearly that was a big influence. Uh, but also a lot of contributors along that path. Starting from probably as early as a middle school teacher, but certainly I remember several high school teachers, and I had a great undergraduate professor and several in graduate school and on. So I'd say sort of each phase of the way, I'd grab onto a mentor and get some really important insights, and I stay in touch with almost all of them still today.
All right, we're going to go to our next question here. This is once again from Mrs. DeMaio's class. How did you choose your career to be a biotech engineer? Which I think we've covered that pretty well at this point. But the second part of their question here is, what makes you an unstoppable hero in your job? I really want to hear the answer to that.
That's beautiful. That's an excellent question. Look, I realize there's a lot of similarities between a general entrepreneur, which I consider myself, and a scientist, which is, failure. You got to be okay with it. And almost think that it doesn't exist. It's more feedback than failure. And so that kind of persistence, I think, is really valuable when you're starting a business or you're trying to answer some questions as a scientist, engineer. This sort of dogged determination. That's a big piece to it.
And do you feel like, is this notion that failure is okay? I feel like I hear that a lot in different areas today, but I feel like that's kind of a recent thing that people admit that this is okay. Do you see that as kind of being more pervasive? Do you see that kind of an attitude, say, in middle school classrooms today, or is this something that people really need to know?
Oh, I think people do need to know, and I think failure, is part of the learning process. And you know, probably folks watching today, how many times do you remember the question you get wrong versus the questions you answered right on the test? It's very much where a lot of the learning moments come from. Absolutely.
We're going to continue moving along here in our program. We're going to jump to our poll questions next. Um, So, we're about halfway through the program here. We've already asked Larry a lot of questions, but now it's his turn to ask you some questions. Larry came up with these poll questions to see how much you know about him and his industry. So let's jump to the first one now. The question is, Larry's college research project involved one of the following. Was it A, dissecting cockroaches that were as big as a baseball card? Was it B, collecting recycled newspapers from the university processing plant? Was it C, wading through knee-high mud to collect rare flowers? Or was it D, studying student behaviors in a classroom setting? I have to admit, I don't know the answer to this. Sometimes the answers are really obvious, and sometimes I know they came from information that we've shared already, either in the profile responses or you might have. I think you've mentioned a couple of the answers. Hint, hint. Earlier in the program, but this was not one of them. So we're going to give our audience a couple of seconds more here to enter in their answers. So far, everybody. Oh, this is changing as we speak. 50-50 think A and C. So they think you dissected cockroaches potentially, or you collected rare flowers. We've got more votes coming in. We've gotten a couple coming in for B now, but we're going to stop it here. And 60% think the answer is A. They either think the answer is A or they want it to be A. They think you dissected big cockroaches. What's the right answer, Larry?
Well, what do you think? What's your guess? Get you on record here.
You know what? I'm going to go with our audience and go for A because again, I want that to be the right answer, but I have a feeling the right answer might be C.
You got to stick with your instinct. The right answer is A.
A,
So,
awesome.
yeah, I worked with these cockroaches that were just ginormous. They were Caribbean cockroaches. And I was trying to find the picture of me holding one from that era, but I couldn't find it. So, unfortunately, there's no actual photo for it. But anyway, yeah, I was studying the bacteria that live inside of those guys' guts.
Very cool in a weird and creepy way, but really cool. I would have been interested to be standing nearby, if not really close, to see that happen. Let's move along to poll question number 2. And here it is. Larry sampled all of the following environments looking for interesting new microbes, except for one of these. Which one did he not go to sample for interesting new microbes? Was it A, a paper plant sludge pond? Was it B, a West Coast hot spring? Was it C, a Caribbean sugarcane rum distillery? Or was it D, a deep sea hydrothermal vent? So, Larry, while our audience is thinking about their response here and entering it into our system, is it safe to say that you can find microbes in all of these environments?
Oh, absolutely. Sure.
Okay, so any of these are
Probably about 3 or 4 miles below the surface of the earth, you can find microorganisms. They're absolutely everywhere. We actually have more microbes in our body than our own cells. So, it's kind of who's really the boss here. We're kind of walking ecosystems,
yeah.
just to put things in perspective.
We've got answers coming in here. So far, in the lead, a paper plant sludge pond. They do not think that you collected microbes there. Interestingly enough, pretty evenly distributed between C and D. Nobody so far thinks B. They must have seen some of the imagery we were showing earlier in the program, and they're ruling out B. So let's see. You have sampled from all of these environments except for one. Larry, why don't you tell us which one it is?
Well, I haven't quite made it to the bottom of the ocean yet. That was something that my lab in graduate school did. But when it was time for me to go down, I graduated. So I missed that window.
Shoot. We've
Tough choice.
yeah, we work very closely with some ocean exploration projects, and we've obviously we've talked to a lot of people who are very interested in that too. It's an expensive thing to do, though, so I can
Yeah, it is.
understand
Yep.
why some of these other options might be more feasible. Let's go on now to poll question number 3 about Larry and his career. Larry's first job after graduating college was one of the following. Was it A, serving popcorn in a small town movie theater? Was it B, high school teacher? Was it C, scientist? Or was it D, professional golfer? We're going to give our audience just a few seconds here to answer. They're going to have to be quick on the trigger to get their vote counted for this one so we can keep on moving. So far, 75% of the responses right now are going for B, high school teacher. Scientist is getting the rest of the votes. Nobody thinks you served popcorn or were a professional golfer. The high school teacher that lead keeps on building. They're up to 86%. So why don't we go ahead and give them the right answer here, Larry?
Well, folks were listening. Yeah. So serving popcorn was my first job ever. If anybody's ever played with golf with me, I'm definitely not a professional golfer. So yeah, it was high school teacher.
All right, I think we have one more poll question. Cool, we'll go to the last poll question here about Larry and his career. The unidentified microbial diversity is estimated at somewhere around A, 20%, B, 50%, C, 75%, or D, 99%. So what we're asking here, just to clarify, what percentage of the microbes that exist on Earth do we know nothing about? Is that a fair translation, Larry?
Bingo.
All right. We've got responses coming in here. So far, they're really pretty evenly distributed between 50, 75, and 99%. Nobody thinks it's A so far, so we'll see if anybody thinks it's A. The lead is building, however, for 99%. 60% of our audience thinks it's 99%. And it looks like those responses are starting to stabilize with those answers. So, Larry, what is the right answer here?
99%.
99%. So, put that in perspective for us. Is there any other type of organism on our planet that we know as little about?
No, that's a really good question. There's just a real strong diversity that is we fumble around and we're developing the tools to detect them and understand them. That's really in the era of genomics, but that's a brand new discipline. So we have a lot to learn still. Absolutely, very fruitful area for a long time to come.
Do you know what category of organisms would come in second place? Would insects be anywhere close?
Yeah, I think maybe that's a pretty competitive one, and still we're talking orders of magnitude difference. Yeah.
Pretty fascinating. We're going to move on and get back to the student questions now. This next one here is from, actually, we're going to have to scroll down here to see it. There's all our poll responses. This is from Kurt. Kurt wants to know, are you always, quote unquote, hungry for information?
Absolutely. Great question. Yeah. You kind of have to be. There's a lot to know, and there's a lot of different areas to be involved in. How does the bacteria grow that I'm working with? How does it react in the reactor? And how do the fish eat it? So there's a lot of different things. Then, how do you actually get it onto trucks and get it into stores? So there's a lot of different things. And a good thing is there's a lot of people out there who know a lot also. So a lot of the trick is to go find those people and connect with them.
Well, here's a somewhat related question from Sarah. She's interested not just in the science part of it, but also the business aspect. She wants to know, how did you learn how to start your own business, and was that hard to figure out?
The hardest part is just getting started. That there's a lot of people who are going to be rooting for you that you don't necessarily realize, and so once you take those steps, there's a lot of support out there, and there's a lot of people that will help build your idea with you and give you feedback and push you in different directions and challenge you. So yeah, I'd say it's really hard, but nothing is as hard as just getting going.
Yeah. So what were the key steps for you to just get over that initial hump?
It just was a whole sort of circumstance, a bunch of circumstances that came together at one time, and something I've been thinking about for a while. So, when these things kind of converge like that, it's usually, that's when you got to go for
The
things.
time was right then. We've got our next question here from Zachary. Zachary's interested in what you like doing for fun when you're not doing your job. Is there more to life than bioprospecting and running a company?
Well, yes and no. There's the reason why I say no is because even when I'm getting ready for bed or when I first wake up, these are a lot of my first and last thoughts of the day. That doesn't mean I can't think about that while I'm helping to coach my daughter's softball game or coaching my son's t-ball. So I would like to spend as much time as possible with my family and get outside and go for hikes and enjoy nature when I'm not working. But that's also where I find a lot of inspiration to kind of think about things in different lights and different angles.
So speaking of inspiration, our next question here is from Hussein. He's interested in your goals and how much progress have you made towards your goals. So I guess first of all, what are your goals, personally, professionally, for your company, and where do you stand with respect to achieving those?
Yeah, great. Yeah, no, and I think it's really helpful to have goals and to sort of chunk them into smaller pieces along because having grandiose big goals is sometimes not easy to obtain. So, but having that vision is fantastic. So part of having those big goals is having smaller goals along the way. So for us, it first was getting funding and getting some technology validation and proving this out, and finding some partners. And so we've done all of that so far. And now, there's the next stages, which is doing this at bigger scale and demonstrating it at larger, with more fish, with different kinds of animals, perhaps. I think this thing is really important in terms of animal nutrition, animal welfare. And so, yeah, I'm pretty optimistic. I'm pretty bullish for the prospects.
So, what are the next steps for you in the company? You've got some momentum going here. You mentioned somewhere that you've gotten some grants to get the ball rolling. What happens next?
Right. Well, we need to get some products to market, and that's part of the business is actually creating something that somebody else wants to buy. And so, first is to demonstrate that the technology works, and then bring it to market. And so we'll do that with partners. We'll do that with our collaborators.
This is funny. So our next question here, Simone, perfect follow-up to what you were just saying, and totally unintentional. Is it ever lonely being an entrepreneur, and do you work with other people a lot?
These are great questions. Yeah, you did a great job combing these. Yeah, it is. You got to find other folks to work with. Sometimes I'm working from home, and so yeah, it's pretty quiet sometimes. But there's here in Boston where I am, there's a fantastic startup culture and startup ecosystem where other entrepreneurs like me can get together and we can share notes and discuss items. But I'm on the phone and I'm doing video conferences most of the time when I am working from home or I'm traveling and visiting other places and other people. So, always exciting, always something different every day. So definitely more exciting than anything else.
Once again, another semi-unintentional great follow-up question to what you were just describing. Mr. Mayo's class asks, what are some of the kinds of tools you use every day? And I would ask you, you just described some of the things some of the kinds of tools that you use to communicate and try to grow their business, but talk about some of the other kinds of tools that you might use in the lab or out in the field
Sure.
as well. And,
Yeah,
and
so
how does
we have
that
a
break
technical
down? How
team that are developing these strains and these organisms, and of course they're doing genetics and things that you might find in a typical molecular biology lab. Then we need to grow these organisms in bioreactors, and so we work with fermentation facilities around the world, and so. Those are big, beautiful silver, oftentimes at least silver bioreactors that are very tightly controlled processes. And so those are just a couple of the different areas. And then, of course, actually, there are a couple different aquariums and fish biology labs that we work with. And so that's a lot of fun, too, is to go see. And a lot of times these places, they don't just have necessarily one type, but maybe 10 or 15 different types of fish and shrimp and lobsters, perhaps. And so that's a lot of fun, too. These a lot of different versions of wet labs in my day.
And we're looking here at, I believe, some krill, and these are in some way your end user for some of your products, right? Not necessarily
Yeah,
people who are
those are
paying for
fire
it, but
shrimp, and yeah, they like our food, and in fact, they want to maybe do a little fisticuffs with each other on trying to get more of it. Yeah.
all right, we give it another question here. This is from Quest Class of Bowling Green. Here's a follow-up to what you were talking before about goals. They actually want to know, what are your goals for the future?
Well, I definitely would like to see our products be part of the supply chain, okay, and to help make this overall fish food supply more safe and healthier, sort of in a world where we don't have to worry about mercury in our fish, for example. So, yeah, I think my goals are very crisp, which is to have this product be included within the current feed pellets.
So we're looking at some of those pellets here, and once again, great segue into our next question from Lisa. When you eat fish, can you tell what kind of food the fish ate?
Oh, that is a good question. In fact, you can. One of the substitutes for fish meal is soybeans. And so a lot of people will say, yeah, fish that eat soybeans don't taste as good to me as fish that eat fish. And so, yeah, that's a very great, that's a good question. And so that's something that technology developers like me need to be aware of.
Yeah,
There's obviously a human consumption side to this.
interesting. We've got a question here from Tracy. what's the coolest place that you've been to as part of your job, and do you like that aspect of your job? Do you like traveling?
I love traveling. Again, another influence from my parents. We traveled as a family early on. So, kind of their fault for planting this bug in me. I've been to some great places, Iceland and South America. And yeah, I've had a really nice fortune. I've had great fortune to go to a lot of cool places.
Sounds great. Well, we have had great fortune to chat with you today. I have to say, I learned a lot. This is an area of science that I am not all that familiar with, and I'm feeling much more confident about what I know about it today, just having listened to you for a little over half an hour. So thank you for taking the time. It's been really fascinating to chat with you.
It was definitely my pleasure.
All
Thanks
right.
for having me.
It's been our pleasure to have you. And we are actually going to be back again for our next STEM Role Model event in 2 weeks. This is actually our last event of the spring season before the end of school. Ecologist Tristy Vick, she is also interested in microbes, seems to be a hot topic these days around here. But the ones that she studies live in an ancient lake that's beneath a half-mile of ice in Antarctica. So join us on June 12th at 1:30 p.m. Eastern to meet Tristy and ask questions about her STEM career. We can learn all about microbes from Antarctica. It should be really cool. That's all the time we have for today. Thanks for watching. For Jason Live, my name is Patrick Shea. We'll see you next time. Take care.